This is an extension to the video I made the other day about the horrendous acts of a human piece of shit who got a 13-year-old middle schooler pregnant. So go check out that video if you haven't already. The link will be in the description. I want to reflect on both the situation and on myself and my comments I've made in my previous video. I'll swallow the harder pill first and say that I think I went too far when I made a comment about Hirotsuka Masayuki, the scum politician who got the middle schooler pregnant, in which I said I believe he deserves to be put on death row for punishment because his past actions are incredibly similar to another cult leader, and he was executed while Hirotsuka roams free because his crime didn't produce as many casualties. I think I took it too far by saying he should atone for his sins with death, so I would like to apologize for that comment. That being said, I still sincerely believe he deserves significant legal punishment, along with a sufficient amount of jail time. Now let's move on to the real topic I want to talk about, which also covers why I'm so adamant about this topic of Hirotsuka and the teen pregnancy, along with where I'm coming from. I'll talk about issues in Japan, and after that, I'll talk about why I personally despise Hirotsuka. As I was born and mostly raised in Japan, I went to Japanese schools, have Japanese friends, and am also part of a Japanese community. In Japan, sexual health education is non-existent. There are middle schoolers and high schools who are aware of how sex works and pregnancy, but they don't know any other details such as STDs, STIs, and especially contraceptives. If I go around Shibuya and ask kids even in university, they wouldn't be able to answer a single STD. They would think fucking Ebola is an STD and that it gets transmitted from eating bats in China. Education in Japan is really fucked, and I think it's especially ass-blasted with the contraceptives department. When I was in high school, a female friend of mine had been unfortunately sexually assaulted. At the time, I was 15, maybe 16. Meanwhile, my friend was 19 and in college, and she needed my help finding what she needs to take to not get pregnant. As someone who has an education outside of the shitty Japanese one, I actually knew what Plan B was, where to get it, and how much it cost. All that kind of shit. Meanwhile, she just found out that contraceptives outside of condoms actually existed. It's fucking baffling at how much shit Japanese sexual health doesn't cover, and even if they do cover it, it's obviously not enforced. This is a country people are known to be pretty smart. It's also known as a place where kids commit suicide daily because they need to take difficult tests and exams all the time, yet they don't learn shit about sexual health. Teen pregnancies is also an issue. I know someone from middle school who got pregnant when they were in high school. I think she was a sophomore or junior at the time. And luckily the father is willing to take responsibility, unlike Micropenis McGee over here. Now for those of you from Japan, you might be thinking, wait, but I don't hear about that on the news. Whenever I watch the news in the morning, I only see talk about the weather and how BTS is #1 again on Japanese Billboard even though they haven't written a song in the past fucking 2 years. To which I would say that is exactly the problem. If you search far enough, you would find out that teen pregnancies and sexual assault has been an issue that is growing in Japan. It just gets worse by the day somehow, yet media doesn't really talk about it, and the same is for the Hirotsuka issue. If you search up Hirotsuka's name and the recent incident, you see clips from Twitter or other Japanese YouTubers like me talking about the situation. Never media or news sources. Fucking these guys would spend hours upon hours covering stories about a retired AKB idol who nobody gives a shit about getting married to a rich tech CEO. Holy fucking shit. Or the imperial princess getting married with a scumbag who steals money from the Japanese government, but they never talk about really negative, controversial, and dark issues like this. Sexual abuse is one of Japan's biggest problems, with rising amounts of young women being forced into prostitution, groping, sexual assault, teen or unwanted pregnancies. There's literally an entire network on Twitter in which underage Japanese girls ask significantly older men for compensated dating/sex. And yes, these are the same underage girls who don't know shit about sexual health. These girls genuinely think that they won't get pregnant as long as the guy pulls out before he nuts. It's so sad that there's this enormous issue, yet only a handful of people talk about this, and when we do talk about it, other people say, well, what the fuck are you talking about? None of that exists. And they treat rape victims or sexual health advocates as if they're Karens on Facebook believing in flat earth. It's really, really upsetting, and I just wanted to get this out. Now moving on to the second part of the manga arc, I want to talk about why I hate Hirotsuka. I mentioned this in my other video, but he's a politician who believes in anti-mask, anti-vax, anti-everything that makes sense. This guy probably masturbates to BuzzFeed flat earth theories. I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but he's committed a major crime that he doesn't get punished for at all. The only punishment he got is getting his YouTube account terminated, so thank you YouTube for doing something meaningful for once. I'm talking about his crime, in which he gathered him and his cult followers to not wear a mask and raid Tokyo's public train transport, more specifically the Yamanote line, which is known to be the busiest and most crowded. He's done shit like this in the past, but most of them were rather private or outside in a park, so if you saw a bunch of negative IQ fucks parading around, you can just walk the other way or avoid them. That's impossible to do in a train where there's jack shit space and there's these idiots raiding the train. I remember seeing people on Instagram and Twitter warning other people to not ride the Yamanote line during the time of Hirotsuka's raid. This happened about 2 years ago when COVID was just popping off, and since then I've despised the man. Before the raid, he also did a live stream saying that everyone who wears a mask shouldn't be listened to because they breathe their own carbon dioxide. Now, if you have an education above a 2-year-old, you would know that he's dumber than a single-celled organism. But we're talking about a time in which people were dying, people were in fear, and people were most vulnerable to bullshit spewed on the internet because they wanted something to believe in. He abused this factor just to push his shit agenda and also get political and internet clout, similar to how he abused a minor and forced her to become a mother. I think that's enough negative shit to talk about, but I'm always willing to talk about these kinds of topics whenever something new pops up with the Hirotsuka shit, or just something else that genuinely pisses me off. So yeah, that's about it. Peace.